Carl Hopkins.
Here.
Bruce Miller. Craig Arcuri.
Here.
Dolores Johnson.
Here.
Karen Kahn.
Here.
Kirk Martin.
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, are there any public comment slips?
No public comment slips.
All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar recommends that the Airport Commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the special meeting of Wednesday, August 17th, and that the Airport Commission receive the monthly airport property report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. Notices that on Friday, September 16th at 5 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at the Airport Commission. And I see one of our two liaisons here, Councilman Michael B.T. Bennett from Goleta. Do you have anything to say?
No.
Nothing. We're moving right along here. Administrative reports. So the first thing, this is an important one, financials, 2016 financials.
Great. Tonight, Tom Bullers will do the presentation on the department's preliminary end-of-year numbers. They're still doing the audit, making journal entries, so this is not the final, but close. So, Tom?
Good evening, Airport Commissioners. This is a review of fiscal year 2016, which ended on June 30th of 2016. Again, like Hazel mentioned, these are preliminary numbers. So a couple of key indicators. Passengers relatively flat versus fiscal year 2015. On the GA side, we had some increased landing fees, and fuel sales flat in terms of gallons as well. Rental car contracts up 4%, but gross revenues for the rental car companies down 2%, which is kind of interesting, but the rental car companies have indicated kind of just a decline in the average daily rates that they receive from some of their customers, and some of the attributions for that are some, with a strong dollar, some less inbound travel from international markets. Parking revenues, long-term lot 2, we have Surf Air and some of the rental car companies over there, so parking revenues have been pretty strong because of those additional revenues. And the commercial airlines have been upgauging continuously, so we've seen some increased landing weights and fuel sales. This chart, you can see some of our traffic, again, flat relatively. You can see 2 years ago, you can see right here, the blues are all higher and American Eagle left, and everything kind of has been relatively flat on those same months. Total operations, up and down a little bit, but clustered around 105,000. The big driver in operations with a lot of GA and local operations make up the bulk of those operations. Fuel sales, we kind of track these in 3 different categories. Avgas, by far the smallest in terms of the amount of gallons sold. You can see pretty flat across the last 4 fiscal years. Jet fuel, that's really the FBOs, what they sell to the GA community, and pretty steady growth the last few years, and then a flattening in FY16 versus FY15. And then jet fuel, the commercial carriers, we recently instituted our fuel flowage fee. 2015 was the first year that we started charging that. But again, with some of the upgauging, you can see that has steadily climbed, and we would expect that to continue to climb into FY17. So this chart shows our operating fund revenues kind of broken down by big category, what they were last year, what the revised budget was, and what we've actually received in revenues for FY16. And I'll just talk about some of the ones with the variances here. So commercial industrial revenues down 3.3% versus budget. That was mainly due to some optimistic assumptions about when we'd start receiving revenues from the restaurant next door. some vacancies and the sale of property across the street, but 3% over last fiscal year, so that's a plus. Non-commercial aviation, about on budget, but up 8% over last year. Landing fees are the big driver of that 8% change. Commercial aviation, a little bit below budget. At mid-year, we adjusted the rates paid by the airline terminal employees, and that really makes up the bulk of that difference, that 2.5% difference from budget. Terminal revenues, that's our parking and rental car revenues, essentially on budget, so rental cars down a little bit, but parking strong and overall roughly on budget. And our other revenues are down kind of significantly here. We had an MOU with the City of Goleta to do a runway protection zone analysis, and that was canceled. There was some grant funding issues that the City of Goleta had, so that was $100,000 and really is the bulk of that budgetary shortfall there. So again, overall revenues 2.5% below budget, but 2% over last fiscal year. And these are some of the highlights that we just talked about on the last slide. Again, the upgauging has been really important. It drives a lot of revenue and also passengers. Bigger aircraft, more seats, more people. On the expenditure side, moving across the columns, it's the same sort of columns. Salaries and benefits, 9% below budget. We've had significant vacancies across most of our division this year. Those positions some of them are filled and some are being filled. Supplies and services, 16% below budget. The one caveat there is we had about $470,000 in encumbrances outstanding, so those will roll into next fiscal year and kind of reduce that 16% a little bit. Special projects, the 94%. We had budgeted for payment of the long-term shuttle bus leases when we canceled the long-term Lot 2 shuttle. Those are off the books now. We were able to transfer those to another entity, so 94% savings versus budget. Equipment, it looks like a big jump from the prior year. We made a big purchase, an $80,000 paint striper to let our maintenance crew do some striping on the AOA, do that internally to save costs versus contracting it out. Capital transfers, that's a really big jump. That's sort of an artificial jump. Last year we had some FAA grants that kind of reimbursed our capital fund, so we didn't actually have to lay out any capital transfers in FY15, but this year we had to do some. And a portion of this almost $4 million, $375,000 was for some of the development on the north side, which we have just been reimbursed as of yesterday for those costs. Again, overall expenditures, 7% below budget and 13% above FY15, and really that's driven by those capital transfers that had to happen this FY16 versus FY15. A lot of the similar things we just talked about. So in summary, our year-end expenditures exceeded revenue by $450,000. That was much better than the revised $1.3 million budget deficit. But there is $470,000 in encumbrances that are going to roll forward to FY17. So FY17, we'll just have to be vigilant about our expenditures and continue to be aggressive in finding new sources of revenue. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Well, I'd say,
Did a great job.
yeah, very good job. We know that the airport has some financial problems, has had for a while. And I commend you on doing as good a job as you've managed to do and to continue. As I've expressed before, concerned about our inability to fully staff patrol all the time, but I'm sure that's something that everybody's working on as best they can. So there's no other questions. I don't think we need any action on this item.
No.
We will move on to the next item, which is aviation forecasting at Santa Barbara Airport, that the airport receive a presentation on forecasted activity at
That's
the airport.
correct, and Tom will also make this presentation. You'll recall that when we did the master plan like 5 years ago and we did the aviation forecast, that was one of the elements of the master plan that the FAA has to approve, which they did. And then on an annual basis, they send out an update to their forecast. And as we know, what was in the master plan didn't go forward the way we anticipated. So tonight, Tom's going to give you some information about the master plan, the current forecast, and sort of where we are in the mix of things. Paul?
Yeah, this is really just a good comparison, I think, for the differences between what FAA is forecasting in 2016 versus what the 2012 Master Plan Aviation Forecasts had forecast. So aviation forecasting is important for airport development. It kind of provides an evidence-based rationale for orderly development of the airport. And that's really what it's used for in the master plan and kind of how we think about some of our long-term, medium-term, short-term projects here at the airport. So for the 2012 Airport Master Plan Aviation Forecast, it looked at historical trends, the 2011 FAA Terminal Area Forecast, some regression analyses, and found that the growth in employments is really tied to county employment growth. That's kind of what the regression analyses found. And that was about, at that time they were projecting about 2.5% growth. FAA was projecting about 2.3% growth, and that is kind of what the Master Plan Committee selected as the most appropriate growth rate. So fast forward here to 2016, the FAA puts together these draft terminal area forecasts, and that's employments and operations at, on an annual basis for airports with more than 100,000 employments. This is sort of a system-wide update, so everything needs to balance on the O&Ds. And for this year, they forecast 1.8% annual growth for Santa Barbara Airport. So in terms of employments here, you can see these are the actual employments in the 2012 forecast and the 2016 terminal area forecast. There's a gap here, you can see, pretty significant. So where do those differences come from? The master plan, over the last 4 years, we've seen about a 4.7% reduction in actual versus what the master plan had forecast, the 2.3% increases. A lot of that is driven by industry changes for the airlines, and we've talked at length about some of those before. Airline consolidation, pilot shortages, fuel prices. They're low now, but they've been high and will probably go up at some point. Airlines continued upgauging from 30 to 50 or 70 seat aircraft, and kind of a consolidation of growth at large hub airports and not at small or non-hub airports like Santa Barbara Airport. So when you look at kind of the terminal area forecast and the master plan, they both have a similar growth rate, around 2-ish%. And this actually The terminal area forecast doesn't include the Dallas-Fort Worth flights. The FAA is really only looking kind of backwards and only makes changes for really significant enplanements. So that kind of would bump this up a little bit closer, so that they would align a little bit more closely over time. They also include some forecasts for GA and itinerant GA here. You can see it's been pretty consistent over the last few years, and the forecasts are really, really close together. Local GA operations, relatively consistent. It had the one outlier year when the master plan was done, but both project a pretty slow growth. And then the FAA also does projections for the future GA fleet mix. This is not for Santa Barbara Airport. This is kind of the nation as a whole. In the short term, you can see small GA kind of going down a little bit, but coming right back up roughly to where it was in 30 years. But corporate GA is doubling. So that's something the airport needs to take into consideration if we really think this is going to be applicable here. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
You said comparable airports, regionals, that sort of thing. Here we're seeing a slight decline, but the large airports were not. They were seeing the growth. So combining the two, what is the general trend?
2015 is the first time overall enplanements reached 2008 levels, overall system-wide. It has been a long recovery since the recession. I think it's up slightly above that now, so essentially flat over that time period.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I have one. Are you comparing with the same size of airport as ours, or are you talking about all the airports in the United States? When you do
All
the
the airports in the
comparison?
United States
All
for
of
the
them.
2015-2008
thank
comparison,
you.
yeah.
I would comment from the time that I was on the master plan that, as I recall, the master plan did specifically call for approximate doubling of the corporate traffic out of here. And also, the 2.3% was an interesting number because there was a lot of discussion as to which one to use. And the statistics went back 20 or 30 years, and it was all up and down. But when you drew a straight line right across it, it was 2.3%. It was right on. Yes, we had great years, and yes, we had horrible years, but it was 2.3% perfect. So we can keep our fingers crossed that we will, even if we're at 1.8 now, we will return to our 2.3% growth. And actually, in order to get there, we'll have to have significantly above that for a short period of time. So can keep our fingers crossed. Thank you very much for that report. And we go on to item 7. Recommendation of the Airport Commission receive a presentation on the progress of the Wings of Honor Marine Corps tribute.
Yes, Commissioners, thank you. I'm going to have Vanna over here. We haven't had an update really on this particular project probably for about 3 years. And I thought it would be good for some of the commissioners who were not here when we entered into the agreement to give you some background information, and then we have representatives from the Pierre Kleisens Foundation that will make a presentation as well to give you an update on their project. Back in 2013, Airport Commission and City Council approved an agreement between the city and Pierre Kleisens Museum and Library Foundation to transfer this project, once it's completed, to the city. And those two agreements that agreement was approved by City Council April 9, 2013. When we started the design of the terminal, one of the aspects of that design process was public art. And you'll recall that we had art on loan from the county, both the chandelier in the lobby, the the Channing Peak mural, as well as artwork that was part of the building, which includes the rotunda area, the stencil, and then we also had other art that was on loan to us, such as the magic clock out in the courtyard. So we had a robust program, but we also wanted to have a rotating art project as well. And that is still something that's underway. Not done yet. So anytime that you have art on city property or art in the city, it goes through the Visual Arts and Public Places Committee for approving that. And it's a lengthy process, but City Council approved back in 1983 the guidelines for this program. I believe right now they're looking at those guidelines and will probably be doing an update, but at this point we're still following those same procedures. As I said, it's a lengthy process to get a project approved through the city. And it starts with a master application, gets reviewed by a variety of committees, including ABR and Historic Landmarks Commission if necessary, and in our case, of course, Airport Commission played a critical role. And then once all those are approved, then the project can go forward. So this particular project, as I mentioned, is from the Pierre Kleisens Veterans Museum, and it is commissioned art that pays tribute to the Marine Air Corps station that was in Santa Barbara and the airport's role during World War II. So when Pierre Kleisens actually approached the airport to propose this project, and Karen at the time decided with her committee to go through the same process for selecting an artist to design the artwork as had been done with other art pieces in the terminal. And so there was a request for qualifications, and the committee had a variety of representatives there, including the airport director and the arts folks from downtown and from the county. And of course, the foundation played an integral role. There were 5 artists responded, but Doug Lochner was the one that was selected to design the artwork. The location, as you know, is on the grassy knoll that's just right next to the historic terminal. And it's glass wings, 20 feet high, and landscaped so that it's accessible for ADA purposes. And we'll have signage and some seating. The review of this project and the approval dates are listed here. In June 2015, Planning Commission issued the coastal development permit for the project. And during this time, the Pierre Kleisens Foundation has been raising money to commission the art to get it underway. So the agreement that we have, so you know, is once the art is completed, it transfers to the city, and then all of it is, the work will be done, or the city has the right to use it in any way that they deem necessary. But the airport also takes on the role for maintenance. There, in the agreement, it stipulates that the artist and the foundation will provide us with guidelines on how to take care of the artwork and what routine maintenance we might need to do, but it will be the city and the airport's responsibility to take care of it. We don't have the responsibility to replace it should something happen, an earthquake or something, and it is damaged or destroyed. We don't have to repair it, but we will notify the artist and the foundation, and if they elect to rebuild or to remove or put it someplace else, then they have that option. So at this time, I'm going to just turn it over to Doug Lochner, the artist, to give you an update on where the project is today. And I think there's an event scheduled for December 7, I think, at the airport. So Doug?
Thank you. I'm Douglas Lochner. I know some of you were on the commission when we went through this, and some of you are new. We're happy to have the opportunity to have this project at the airport. And as was explained, this started out as a public art call. The original idea or concept for a tribute here to honor the veterans that served here and the significance that this facility played in World War II was based on a different concept than the wings. The wings came about through an evolutionary process that refined what we were trying to say and how we were trying to honor the people that served here and the base itself. So this is the plan set, the final plan set that was used for the Coastal Commission approval. You'll see the green belt there, and this is an aerial view that shows you the sidewalks and the layout of the installation. The mound, as it is now, will be pulled down a little bit. Right now, it's about 4.5 feet above grade. For ADA requirements, that needs to come down some. It's not going down totally flat, but there's an access issue that we have to deal with. And then we're installing the sidewalks, which are symbolic, representing the crossroads that we as a nation faced during World War II. The wings themselves are somewhat of a technical marvel. They are contiguous pieces of glass. As you'll see by the model, there's no metal framing or anything holding them up. They're supported strictly by cantilevering off a 2-foot glass base, which is pocketed in the stainless steel base. When completed, it'll be the largest cantilever glass sculpture in the world. It's never been done. The glass will be 4 inches thick, each segment of each wing. The total glass weight is about 10 tons, 5 tons per wing. It's going to be a remarkable sculpture. The size and aspect ratio was chosen carefully based on the architecture of the new terminal. So I came and story polled it, actually put up a giant ruler and took pictures and sight lines to make sure that it didn't interfere with the aesthetics of the building. That was one of the many concerns that we addressed moving forward with this project. The site itself is integrated, again, with the sidewalks. There's some benches, which are local Santa Barbara sandstone, carved, wedge-shaped Santa Barbara sandstone benches, which sort of mimic wings as well, as some bronze plaques, which will be set into rocks, which are in the green belt. The round circle that you see in the green belt, you'll see the images in the center of the bottom of the screen. It's meant to mimic a tidal pool. So there's succulents, so low water, low maintenance, and it'll look sort of like, sea anemones and all those really neat things that are just a block away at the beach. So again, that was to sort of give a nod to our location here relative to the coast. As far as illumination, the only illumination for the site is the wings are edge lit. So there's super high efficiency LEDs underneath the wings incorporated in the base that illuminate by shining up through the wings. Other than that, there's no spotlights or any other external illumination. Again, to try to keep it, we want this to be as tasteful as possible and really ethereal more than dominating the airport. So this talks about the illumination intent. These are views done to illustrate how it will look before, so they're before and after views of each of those orientations for the wings. The sculpture is actually intended for people to walk through, so there's a whole psychology around why it's leaning and the extent it's leaning and all of that, which I can go into if you'd like, but I don't want to take too much time here. Like I said, the benches are carved Santa Barbara sandstone. There's also a medallion, a compass rose in the center of the walkways. And these are the plaques. So there's a history plaque explaining essentially why the wings are here and what we're trying to get across. A naming plaque, both, naming the city and the Pierre Clason's Veterans Foundation. And then there'll be a donor plaque for the people that provide support for the project. So, any questions? Yes.
I recall when you made a presentation some time ago that when we were talking about the glass, it's not window glass,
No.
and it's not fragile, and it's also somewhat self-cleaning, as I recall.
Right. So when you have glass doing what we're expecting this to do, you can't just use regular window glass. So this in this case, it's 7 layers of glass that are fused together. They're laminated together, so it's done the same way they make bulletproof glass. That makes it extraordinarily strong. And then the glass itself is annealed and tempered in a way to give it additional strength. In addition to that, the glass will have a coating on it that is, often referred to as self-cleaning. But basically, it's a molecular-sized polymer coating on the glass that achieves a few things. The first is that it makes water sheet off it. It's similar to the same stuff they put on jet windshields, by the way. Jets don't have window wipers. When you're flying 600 miles an hour, they don't work. So they coat the glass with these super hydrophobic chemicals which allow water to sheet off without leaving a film. So it will have that, and another aspect of that coating is that it ionizes using sunlight. So during the day, the glass charges one way, and then at night it charges a different way. So it repels dirt. Using electrostatic reverse charge to repel dirt. So this is a technology that's being used in everything from showers to skyscrapers, and we're using it on the glass to keep maintenance down. In addition, all the stainless steel is marine grade stainless steel. I'm envisioning a pewter type distressed finish so that there's no high polish or anything to try to keep up. The oval bases will be concrete. The walkways are concrete. The plantings are extremely low maintenance. The benches are rock, So.
Good.
Any other questions? Comments?
I'd like to say something just to Hazel. Hazel, I just wanted to thank you for the briefing, because I wasn't here when it first started, and it really helps. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you.
And it's a very impressive model here that I don't know whether that's been shown on the television here, but it looks very nice, particularly when the lights are down.
Thank you.
It does.
I think it helps get the point across better than the picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you use that for a nightlight in your living room?
Okay, and the last item we have is the director's report.
I just have a couple of items for you tonight. Once again, bragging on employments. We are up this month 4.4%
Yes.
over the same time last year.
Yes.
And year-to-date, we're up 2.6. So that we are getting back to that 2.3% growth. We're going to tackle that. The biggest.
I would, if you may comment, that I noticed that the year-to-date change is for the last 4 months has increased from -0.1 to +1.2, +2.3, and +2.6.
Yes,
which
indeed.
is excellent.
And as you know, June started the Dallas service, which is a big part of that, with American up 15.6%, which is very robust.
Good.
And also, the other two carriers, United and Alaska, are showing modest growth, but still growth, which is good. So I'm very pleased about that. The master plan continues. It has a life of its own. We will be responding. We have collected comments from a variety of agencies and groups, and so we will be responding to those comments hopefully in the next 30 to 45 days, and then recirculating the final draft EIR, I hope. Additionally, our electrical safety project, our FAA grant project is basically completed, but we added on at the end of that project a new beacon for the tower. So we have the beacon, and we're just waiting for the FAA to give us approval on the 7460 for the height and, right? That's,
Yeah, the 7460 is the notice of proposed construction, and they just do an obstruction evaluation on it. We're waiting for that approval. And it is our beacon, but we're able to place it on top of the tower thanks to the generosity of the FAA letting us use their facility.
and this one you'll be able to see from all angles, correct?
We anticipate better visibility from this beacon.
Good. Also, our particular commercial industrial project that we've been working on will go to Planning Commission on October 6th in the afternoon. So you might make a note if you're available and would like to join us in council chambers on October 6th. Planning Commission starts at 1 o'clock. So we're really excited that we're moving that project along as well. And another project that we thought was dead on arrival, but it isn't, and that's Jeff's solar project for the long-term parking lot. It's been re-energized, and we have 2 new proposals, and we'll be evaluating those proposals and then hopefully negotiating a new agreement so that we can keep that project going. It's a pretty important one for council for sustainability, and in the long run, it will be very beneficial for the airport as well.
Hey, so
And-
can you remind us again why that died last time?
Sun Edison, the company that we had the agreement with, filed bankruptcy.
Okay.
That'll do it.
That's the short answer.
Right.
And finally, two additional things. D&G car dealership proposal, where we had the old Chrysler dealership, or in that general area, they did file their development review application today, so they are moving forward. Getting all of the background information and the studies done does take a while, so they are moving forward on that. And then last but not least, the city's doing recruitment for commissions. We do have 2 commissioners who are expiring in December.
Uh-oh.
Retiring?
Reports of
I
our
didn't want to
demise
say
have been
terminating.
greatly-
So I urge you both to apply, and anybody else that's interested. We do have applications at the back of the room for filling out for any of the advisory committees throughout the city. And the application deadline is October 11 at 5:30, and those need to go to the city clerk's office. So with that, I will answer any questions that you might have for us.
I believe there's an upcoming groundbreaking for Direct Relief International. Do you have a date of that?
The information that I have is that it's the 29th of the month from 5:30 to 7:30, and it will be on their northeast corner of the property, is what I understand. So yes, that's happening.
And a question for Tracy, I know it's pretty early, but how did things go?
Yes, thank you for asking. Yesterday, we had our triennial emergency exercise. It went well. It was about 20 agencies, I think about 22 agencies participated in. And all of the first responders are our main goal as far as training. It started at 9. We simulated about a 70-seat passenger aircraft, having a runway excursion after landing, fire, some survivors, some fatalities. We did triage, treatment, transportation. We also exercised our friends and family plan, dealing with distraught relatives, and we had our department operating center in this room going as well. So it went well. We learned a lot of things like we always do, and found a couple glitches we'll try and clean up next time around, and we'll have a PowerPoint next month for you.
Terrific,
Great.
thanks.
Great.
Great.
Other comments? I noticed already some construction. Is that DRI that's doing the construction so far?
They're doing the demolition
Right.
at this point.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
None of that is the airport's light industrial
No,
project
we
yet?
have just a sliver of land right along Hollister.
Right.
But the DRI also will be doing the road, the new Botello, or not Botello, but Becknell Road. So that's under their contract as well. We will share in the cost of that road, but they're actually doing the construction. So
Okay.
what they're doing now is demo and getting ready for the grading and drainage.
Okay, one last comment I'd make is that when we talked here earlier about the growth of 2%, 3%, to just remind people that new airlines showing up here doesn't just fall out of the sky. It's due
Let's
to
hope
a
not.
great, no pun intended there. It's due to a great deal of work by the airport staff to go out there and convince these airlines that they should be improving and enhancing and increasing the service here. And so I'd like to thank all of you who have done that, because the more the better when it comes to travel opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Certainly, staff should be commended on the performance of the past year.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, we are adjourned.